didn't plug through, but as long as we're up and running, that is all that matters. So everybody, if you're out there, we are live today with the one, the only, the myth, the legend, Rodney Hall. Rodney, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, and we got the one and only Biggs from Biggs Idea, Miles. Thank you, Miles, for joining us.
Absolutely, pleasure to be here as always.
So listen, we are going, well, for one, we're going to talk about Rodney's craziness and his adventures already. He's he breaks ground in a lot of areas, but this time he did it in the air. But we're going to talk about influence, increasing your influence, what you need to do to be relevant, especially in today's market. We're all sitting at home behind computers, social media, more so than ever. And Rodney's going to give us the inside scoop on this because Rodney Hall, you spend most of your time looking at what people are doing because you are out there doing executive searches and trying to help your clients find some of the best people. Is that an accurate comment?
It is, and I'm always amazed and astonished by the varying results.
Yeah. Well, I bet you are. Well, so first off, I mean, all right, man, you just hopped on a plane, and then you posted that you were on a plane, and then that post went nuts. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was going to be a pioneer on this. I assumed people were starting to do it more than I expected. I also expected the flight to be half as full. It was a regional jet, a 2x2 on the seating. It was 75% full, and an hour and a half flight. And, just on a whim, I snapped a picture of how full the plane was, and a couple of things came to mind. You don't realize how many touch points there are on your way to the airport, parking the car, getting on a shuttle, going to the TSA, getting on the plane. It becomes a very new experience, and I must have used half a can of sanitizer. There was no service on the plane at all. Right. And wearing a mask. Everybody had a mask on the whole flight. That's not the most comfortable thing. And so I did that yesterday, day before yesterday, and then yesterday coming back. And I posted just a note that, this was a fuller flight than expected. And I've had 4,500 views of that post since yesterday. And what was really surprising were the comments I got from people who were much more road travelers, veteran road travelers than myself even, who all were saying, gosh, you sure are brave. I'm not there yet.
I'm going to put it up on the screen. Can I show everybody?
Sure.
I mean, this is it right here, everyone. That is the post, and it was a full flight. Look at that.
Yeah, it was about 80%.
Yeah, for sure. Looks like you got the tail end of the plane there on that one, huh?
Actually, that's about halfway through.
Yeah,
it just looks that way. But anyway, it's not lost on me that I was in close quarters with, 75 to 100 people in a plane twice in 2 days. And when I got home, my wife refused to give me a kiss or a hug. She made me go change clothes and take a shower. And, she doesn't want to come into my office where I'm sitting right now because it could be contaminated. So it was an interesting experience. I think we're all going to get there sooner, or later.
Right.
But I didn't realize I was such a pioneer. And I had several people say, I'd really like a post later on what you experienced, what we need to know, stuff like that.
Sure. So, yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting too in that photo. You weren't even allowed to use the little drop downs for putting your laptop on or anything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then in like the little pouch where you put your water bottle and all that, you're automatically aware of, well, now I'm touching this and pulling it back and then grabbing my water bottle. It's an interesting experience. At home right now, we're used to going to grocery stores, Home Depot, you know your routine. You kind of know where you need to be careful.
Right.
When you travel, you're going to realize exactly how many things you come in interaction with.
Absolutely. Well, let's because we're going to talk a little bit further and why that reaction was what it was on that post, because you had another one that hit over 20,000 views recently, which I think is amazing because we're talking about increasing influence and branding and everything that you do. Why don't you tell our audience that maybe doesn't know you exactly what Rodney Hall Executive Searches does?
All right. I'm in the executive search business. I've been in it for 30 years. Originally got started in home building, purely home building. We did work nationally. I actually got into the business in the late 80s during the RTC recession. So it was not the greatest time, but we were doing a lot of recruiting out of the oil states and sending people to California, Virginia, Maryland. The two East Coasts were doing really well. And so we started in home building. I gravitated towards starting a practice in community development. Started doing that nationally. By no specific design, our clients were always national in scope. People assume that we did a lot of stuff in Dallas, when actually it was only a fraction of our business up until the past 10 years. And so our practice is largely focused on what we call the residential categories. That would be community development, home building, and multifamily. The commercial, industrial, retail, hospitality, that's not our niche. One thing I learned early on is it's better to go narrow and deep in the search business if you're going to work nationally. If you're working just in one market, you can be a generalist, do multiple industries, things like that. But our searches are pretty much all over the gamut. And let's face it, you do anything for 30 years, you're going to get to where you know a lot of people.
Right.
And you hear a lot of stories.
Well, for sure. I mean, listen, I think I always say business is easy until people get involved, first of all. That's kind of and I stole that from Dave Ramsey. I can't say that's my own personal thing, but it's always stuck with me. But yeah, I mean, you have to be diversified, right?
Yeah. And there's a misconception that recruiters do nothing but make a couple of phone calls, make a matchmaking connection, and then, charge a lot of money. And the reality of doing it well requires understanding the industry, understanding how different companies in the same industry are organized differently, so that you can make an apples to apples research comparison. And I think a lot of things are lost just on understanding, knowing what you're looking for. Okay. Because what I may look for in Virginia has a different title in Florida or Texas. So there's a really strong emphasis on understanding the research side, who the players are, who's on first, who's on second. The second part of that is the recruiting part, which is understanding how to deliver the message. And all of this builds into branding. But, how do you convey the greatest amount of information about an opportunity in the least amount of words? Okay? Because people are now looking at it on their phones. So that's not the place to put the job description that goes on for 2 pages. The third part of it is what we call candidate and client management. Once you get a candidate in the process, there's truly an art, and it's an art that until you've made a lot of mistakes and done it wrong, you don't really understand fully. And that is just managing the process with a candidate that has a spouse and kids, and this is going to have a major impact on their lives, and a client. Sometimes the clients are as difficult to manage as the candidates. And just a note I'll say is I've had more than one client say, hey, you get us good candidates, we'll clear the decks to interview good people. Well, you get to that point and they go, well, I want so-and-so involved in the interview panel and he's going to be out that week, or he's got a zoning hearing, so he can't do it till the following week. And that week I'm going to be out of town. And it's like, okay, here's the litmus test on whether that's true or not. So anyway, bottom line is there's a lot of different moving parts that go into it to make it actually work. In that process, you get to where you talk to a lot of people, and probably something people don't realize is we get to hear and see what works and doesn't work in a lot of companies, and it creates kind of a feeling for the differences in how companies operate and how candidates react.
Sure. Well, listen, everybody, I got to just put it out there. We got people joining in. If you're just joining us, we got Rodney Hall on today. We're talking about recruiting, executive searches, what you need to do to influence, what you need to do to brand. What we need from everybody out there watching is questions, and also for you to like and share this. This is interactive. I have some new features, Rodney, which is going to make this fun. I'm gonna tout my friend, Mr. Greg Ugaldi, real quick. Can everybody see what we do now? Look at that, Greg. I put you up on screen. He said we are all wrestling with appropriate travel. It's about protecting others, and we are searching for a balance. So, Rodney, you're the first one that we are trying some of this new technology on. So I think we want to thank everybody for joining us, and I think it's time to really dive into it because now we know who Rodney Hall is. Rodney, are you ready to educate the world on what we should be doing to make sure we're successful in our careers?
Sure, absolutely. Do you want me to address that last comment?
Do you the successful part or the careers?
No.
What Greg said?
What Greg just said.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Here's the way I would look at it, Greg, is could I have accomplished the same thing with a Zoom conference yesterday as opposed to jumping on a plane? And I would say I could have accomplished about 70% of it. If this was a client I had met personally before and had some prior contact, there would have been no need to go see them. Because this was a good client, and frankly, I was of the mindset that it was really safe to travel, I was kind of anxious to actually wear a collared shirt and put long pants on and actually go, not press the flesh, but at least be there with them. And I could tell they really appreciated that. So there's some rhyme and reason on why I did it. For the most part, though, I'd say if it's not a new relationship, I'd probably stick with Zoom for right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. But there is something to be said for face-to-face interaction, having dinner, just bonding and getting to know somebody. And that's a little bit harder when you're doing Zoom. But if it's just strictly business meetings and things you're already engaged in, absolutely. But yeah, you won't see me on a plane. I'll be in quarantine for a month.
Well, and check back in 2 weeks and I'll give you an update and let you know if I came down with anything. That'll be the real litmus test on whether it works.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, listen, I give you a lot of credit for doing it and traveling and jumping on a plane. So maybe that's what we'll do. We're going to have you pop in on our show 2 weeks from now and just see how Rodney's doing. Life is still kosher, and if your wife kissed you again.
Yeah, and I'll light the thermometer to my head and see what the temperature is.
Yeah.
All right.
Love it. All right, so let's jump into this, Rodney. So there's a couple things that we're going to go through. One, we have some example resumes, some ideas of, what things should look like that I think is relevant to talk about, and I think we'll add that to the show. And I also think that it's going to be relevant to, maybe we can start off with some of the questions that Miles had put together earlier. And I think it'll kind of guide us down the road of what is personal branding, what is increasing your brand. Everybody's on social media. Let's jump into, what is, the most effective way you've seen someone grow their brand that works with a resume and with with executive recruiting.
I without a doubt, it's going to have something to do with an online presence, whether it is, or it's going to start with LinkedIn. Okay. LinkedIn 15 years ago made it copacetic to actually put your resume online. I don't know how they finally got everybody over that comfortable level, but when they did, it became a game changer.
Right.
Not unlike Amazon taking forever to really get profitable. But once they did, it was over. I don't know or see anything on the horizon that will replace LinkedIn for people being able to have their own personal website with their resume on it. And it is the go-to place for almost every recruiter, hiring manager, people that are just nosy and snoopy. Yeah, I mean, it's where you go now. And one of the questions you'd pose is about a resume. Resumes are still important for deeper dive data. The key thing is a online presence is the fastest way for people to learn about you directly and then secondhand through sharing. So that dynamic has really changed the industry. Any searches we do, we immediately go to LinkedIn and try to at least get a handle on, is this somebody we want to invite to our party or not? Okay. At least it's a snippet, a snapshot. How much information's on there we can talk about later. But, on the branding side, it starts with LinkedIn. The second part of it is just making sure people know who you are and what you do. So many times we've done searches and a really good candidate doesn't come across our radar screen because they did a very poor job of helping us find them. They had the wrong keywords. It was a generic profile that talked about what a great, successful, results-oriented person they are. It was a self-ascribed testimonial. None of that are keywords that I search by when I'm looking for a director of operations or a VP of land or whatever. Okay. So sometimes people think they need to follow the guidance in an old resume book about having this testimonial to themselves that it sounds like their mom wrote for them. Okay. That also ends up using valuable space. And when I say resume, it could be on your LinkedIn profile. You don't want somebody to have to keep thumbing through their phone, scrolling down the pages to find out that you work for XYZ company, which happens to be the leader in the industry. But you spend a lot of time telling me that Miles is a great guy and results oriented, or, that Dave's a leader in his profession. Okay. Nobody cares about that. Right. Nobody's going to make a decision on that. The second thing I would say is participating in industry events. And I've been in this business 30 years. For the first 15 years, we had the good fortune of just having referral business. People heard about us through other clients, would call us. We were a small shop with 5 people. We didn't need to really do a mass market advertising campaign, and we were very fortunate to have a lot of very good, loyal clients that recommended us to others. Somewhere around 15 years ago, I started getting involved in industry associations like ULI, and got on a product council, became involved in that. I was taught early on, you want to give versus trying to get. So, the rule is don't wear your game jersey when you go to industry associations. You're there to make connections, hopefully build your business, let people know about you, but you're really there first to listen, learn, and help. And so I think I went 10 years without ever giving out a business card at a ULI event. Well, from that, I got involved in the Housing Innovation Alliance. And, which a lot of the people on this broadcast are probably members of. What you discover is how much you really enjoy being around people. There's something that really happens when you're exposed to the best and brightest minds in ULI, the Housing Innovation Alliance, local councils. The more you're around those people, the more everybody's guard drops and they start confiding in you. They start coming to you for advice. You're able to go to them for help when you have a need. So we went a long time, 15 years without doing any of that. Once I got involved in that, it was like what you would refer to as my influence and brand went up exponentially. And those are relationships that become solidified and stronger than just a casual passing at a national builder show.
Right.
It's where you really get chance to have intimate conversations and get to know people. And, I'm 62 now. I wish I'd started that long ago. And not just for personal benefit, but just because of the joy and fulfillment of being able to do that. So I guess if I had to wrap it up on branding, it's the adage or scripture, look not just to your own interest, but the interest of others. And You'll find when you do that, it ends up coming back and paying off.
Yeah, 100%. Miles, now that's a whole lot of chewing there for answering. And I know they say champing at the bit. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, there's a lot of good points and takeaways there. About giving before you get, right? And that's how you gain your influence, right? If you're just in there, like you said, inviting people to the dance, if you're just going up to everybody that you know, asking them to dance, it doesn't work as well as, building that relationship before you make the ask. And so in many ways, your personal reputation becomes your professional brand, is what I got from what you just laid out there. I'm also curious, back to resumes, you mentioned about data on the resume versus what's out there on LinkedIn. So I'm curious, if we look at the two side by side, what data should people have on their resume that might be different than what's on their digital footprint?
All right, let's start with the resume first, because I'm going to be able to make a comparison to LinkedIn. And I think if you go to that John Smith one.
Yep, give me 1 second.
Okay. And everybody bear with me. I'm going to blow through this pretty quick. This is an actual resume that came in last night. Now, I've changed the names and some of the first companies just for confidentiality, but it came in and immediately I see all resumes like this. And if you look at the top, it's the boilerplate summary that tells what an accomplished person this is. It does have the fact that they're a former naval officer, which is interesting. But I get resumes like this all the time that sometimes it doesn't even say real estate. It says just accomplished executive, goes through all of these other keywords. Then it goes into core competencies, and that ate up almost the top half of a resume. Now, if this was on a LinkedIn profile, I'd be doing a lot of scrolling to see that content. Now go on down to education. Stay on that same page, go to education. Look at this. Here's what's hidden at the bottom of the page. This guy has an MBA from Cornell, a master's in professional studies in real estate from Cornell, and it's a United States Naval Academy grad. For whatever it's worth, that should have been the first thing I saw, along with the fact that maybe just a statement that he was a real estate executive. But you've got a lot of white noise above that are words and bullet points that can be included in the actual description of the jobs. Now we have to go to the second page to actually see where he worked. All right. I took the name off where this person is now because they're still there, but it's a regional developer owner of multifamily communities. Prior to that, he was with Balfour Beatty, which is, one of the top five nationally. Also, Campus Apartments before that. You can clearly see, what his positions were. Keep going down. Aimco, another big player, and then go one more page. Trammell Crow. All right. These are some name brand companies that were relegated to the second and third pages of his resume, and it's really not necessary. So let's go back to Miles talking about LinkedIn. All of this does not need to be on the LinkedIn profile. You could truncate much of that data, but here's what really needs to stand out. And let's go to the second example. This is the same resume coming up here. It's John Smith 2. There we go. This is exactly the same resume with a lot of the excess information taken out. We immediately see his Cornell and U.S. Navy. We see his position, and I didn't go into a lot of detail because he's only been there for a year. But then when we get to Balfour Beatty and Campus Apartments and Aimco, you'll notice it has a short paragraph describing what he did and then projects. And here's one thing in the real estate development, home building industries, land development, whatever, multifamily, which helps me as a recruiter and most hiring managers is if they can quickly associate you with projects, processes, things like that. Because in this case, in a quick glance, I see three name brand companies, and I'm able to see his title, and someone from the industry will have a good idea what someone does in those positions. And I get to see the nature of the projects. Mm-hmm. And does this kind of make sense? This tells me more at a glance than that boilerplate of long information he sent me on his first resume. If I was going to do a LinkedIn profile, I'd probably make it look as close to this as possible. Okay? Go to the second page of that. Now we've got the whole resume down to 2 pages. I couldn't get Trammell Crow. I couldn't get the Corps of Engineers. I couldn't get the U.S. Navy on there. But we certainly made it a lot more easy to understand in a shorter period of time. Now, to go one more, go to the next slide on his third version. I do this sometimes just as an example of minimal information. And before we get into this, let me tell you a quick story. Back in 2006, I had the honor of writing a column for Professional Builder magazine, and they allowed me to do that for about 5 or 6 years. And the very first time I wrote one, I labored over it for, 2 or 3 days. Must have had been 3 pages long. I was really proud of it. I sent it in to him, and Pat O'Hanlon, I think, was the editor. And he sent it back to me, and he said, let me give you a tip. Try to communicate your message in the least amount of words possible, and then only add words that are absolutely necessary or that you feel really improve it. And he took my column, which would have taken a couple of pages in Professional Builder, and made it a byline on the side of about 120 words. And at first I was offended, my feelings were hurt, and then it sunk in, okay, I get it. And because I'm watching Scott Saddam write these articles in there that were 4 or 5 pages long. Long story short about all of this, when you're thinking about your branding, think about the elevator pitch. What's the most critical information somebody needs to know in the shortest period of time? And then be very judicious as you add more. Now, Dave, go back to that slide. This is the guy's same resume with nothing but where he worked, his education, and his titles. And I'd be willing to bet if I'm looking for a VP of development from the multifamily or student housing industry, if I saw nothing but this, I'd call the guy. There's nothing on here that would prevent me or ruin my appetite for pursuing him, because I'm seeing name brand companies, I'm seeing a progression of experience, great academics, et cetera, et cetera. Not that this needs to be, Miles, the LinkedIn profile, but you start here and then figure out what's really going to enhance that. And to me, it would be projects or processes, reduce cycle time on 120 homes annually from this to this, resulting in a savings of X dollars. Now, I've rambled on you there, but that's probably the best example I can give on what needs to be on LinkedIn, what needs to be on your resume. His first resume, absolutely he can keep it, but don't send it out until somebody says, hey, I'm interested in talking to you. You know, I saw your LinkedIn profile. There's enough there that made an interest. Can you send me more information?
Yeah, that's very helpful. And the examples really illustrate what you're talking about. So
Gotcha.
I've heard people give opinions, but that's the first time somebody's broke it down with examples before. I think that's helpful to everybody watching.
Yeah, I agree. So Rodney, so, example 3, if we go with example 3, would that be the first thing you'd send out? And then, or, like if somebody does that, what gives you the quick overview. And then what you're saying is when they ask for more information, send them a more in-depth resume, like resume number 3, like the first one.
No, I'd probably do a hybrid of 2 and 3.
Yep.
Where it had a couple of projects and a quick summary of what they did. I think that would be suitable. The last example with just the skeleton of it, the down and dirty, is just to demonstrate if we actually are honest, the first and the second and third will give you almost the same information. I would still err on the side of the second one, which has a little bit more information.
Right.
The takeaway is, people are going to really look at who and where you worked.
Right.
One of your questions was, what's the biggest mistake people make? And it is having that long list of stuff at the top. I think if you were to ask everybody that ever did interviews or hired someone, and they were honest, they would say all that stuff at the top about the summary and objectives and all that, they always scan past it when they're looking through resumes or profiles. And the first thing they want to know is where you worked, what your title was, and maybe anything associated with that. Okay? Because once they do that, they may go back and read the rest of the stuff at the top. But to somebody that hires a lot of people, interviews a lot of people, first thing I want to see is names that I can connect with, positions applicable to what I'm doing on my search, and why make it hard for people to get to that point? And I know that goes against all the resume books that have cool borders and tell you how you need to make it sound, really great. There's the Joe Friday, thing about just the facts, ma'am. There's some truth to that.
Right.
And I think people are inundated online with digital media, social media, email marketing that always has big fat claims. And then you've got to kind of sort through what it is.
Yeah.
We've intentionally tried to steer away from that. Time's too valuable. Bottom line is, here's what we're looking for. Who do you know that might be interested? So,
yeah, no, I love it. And you know what? It kind of leads into, the next question then. we talked, what we should be doing with resumes and what we should be putting online. What are some of the biggest personal brand mistakes people are making that you run across? This was another question, Miles, that you posted. So I'm going to let you run with that one, Miles, because I know this is something that comes up in your world all the time.
Yeah. So for more context, you gave us one example about that big intro section of the resume where they're talking about how great they are, their own testimonial. I think that's a good example of a mistake. I was curious for this in context of the digital footprint. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I've got a podcast, I'm putting out a lot of content, and people always, when I was going through college, right, they're like, hey, be careful about what you put online because a company's going to find it and then you're not going to get hired for what you put out there. So I'm curious, in your position, somebody who actually is the person searching, what you see people doing online when they're trying to grow a personal brand that they think is good, but it's actually bad and works against them when you're doing a search.
Keeping in mind that LinkedIn is different than Facebook. Occasionally you'll have a crossover on a post that would be appropriate for either one. Obviously, political post is a death sentence, and I'll be honest, I've caught myself venting my personal opinions on Facebook and realizing I would never put that on LinkedIn. Granted, it's friends on one side, business associates on the other, but a lot of those meld together. So I think the one thing when you're posting is to think about the person who would be most hurt or damaged by what you're posting. How would you feel if they saw it? And
right.
Just to be aware of that, does the world really need to know what you're putting out there? Now, the converse to that is my post about being on an airplane. I started not to even do it, and it's like, this is interesting. It's a lot fuller. I put it up there. Well, heck, by now it probably has 5,000 views in one day.
Right. Yeah.
Probably about 25 comments. So I could argue that I didn't need to really post that. Interestingly, I've had 2 private messages from that where they commented on the fact that I was traveling. And they also said, because I was top of mind at the moment, call me when you get back. I'd like to discuss a search with you. So it makes me wonder, wow, if they hadn't seen that, would they know?
Yeah, sure.
There is a thing about activity begets activity. So what you should or shouldn't put on, I think you have to make a rational decision on that. As a lot of people know by now, I also broke from my business routine on LinkedIn by posting my son's graduation picture.
Well, I want to ask you a question that's going to lead into that, because you did, and that was impressive. There's a lot of people, me included. I have young daughters. I have a young son, right, that are coming up. They don't understand the ramifications of what they're posting yet at a younger age, let's say high school, in college, some good party photos, whatever the case is. How, before we get into your son, because you probably have gone through it with your son, how do you talk to a younger generation just coming into the workforce that may have some of that shouldn't probably have it online type thing happening? Does it hurt them, or does it make them real?
Well, you don't see them doing that on LinkedIn. You see it on Instagram and Facebook. And I know in my son's case, they've already been counseled early on through college instructors not to, or at least to be mindful of what they're doing and putting out there. There's nothing in particular I've had to say to him about it. And part of the problem is he's really not on Facebook anymore. He's on Instagram, and I'm not on Instagram. I also don't use Twitter.
How about TikTok? You should be on TikTok, Rodney. You got it.
Yeah, I think I have to do a dance or something for that. So I'm a little ill-equipped to say, but my counsel to them would be, look, if you want to do the other stuff, that's fine. Be aware that, people are going to see it. They're going to make some assumptions, right or wrong. I know there's times we're trying to get a better understanding of a candidate, and I'll look at their Facebook page.
Right.
And quickly, because of the albums and music they like, their activities, their political posts, you start drawing these conclusions. Okay, right or wrong, it happens. And if we deny it, then we're in denial. So, you need to be aware of that. The hard part for young people is to understand how to make that transition into LinkedIn and the importance of that. So, there's a whole class, I think, or, a curriculum. I'm sure somebody out there is providing guidance. There is a difference between being new to the marketplace as opposed to somebody that's a 10 or 20-year veteran.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So interestingly enough, jumping into what happened with your son's post, right? With the graduation, the post went, if you could say went viral at over 20,000 views, and you had a lot of comments. But what I found most interesting about the post wasn't how many views it got, because I think it was relevant, was the conversation that you had with your son.
Yeah. Did you show the post yet?
I have the picture here.
Okay. I don't know if you can scroll down. Oh, let me mention this. Number one, there weren't any normal class photos.
Yeah.
So we had to get his girlfriend's friend, who's an amateur photographer, to take pictures. And that's the one that we used and sent out with announcements. Now you can go back to it.
Well, I'm going to go actually to the feed. I only had the photo, but I'm
okay.
You keep talking about that. I'm going to pull up the feed so you can talk about that. How about it?
All right. This is one of those times where it had nothing to do with business whatsoever, but doggone it, I was thrilled that my son got out in 4 years, got his finance degree, and frankly, I love the picture. And so I posted up there, forgive me for some parental pride, but just wanted to say congrats to my son, who came out with a finance degree from University of Arkansas, and put it up. Okay. Now, most of my posts usually receive around 1,500 to 5,000 views. The most views I ever had was Crystal Lagoons, and I did a post on one of their grand openings, which was a gorgeous picture of a natural lagoon. It garnered 14,000 views, which I thought was pretty amazing. Well, whether or not you can see it at the bottom and really read it, today's count is...
I don't think I can see your views. I think only you can see the views, but you do have 379 reactions and 67 comments.
Exactly. And these reactions are from largely people in my network. They're people I've recruited, people I've done work with, people I know through the Housing Alliance, ULI. I mean, these are some good people for a young person to know. And there was a total of 24,000 views in a matter of about 3 or 4 weeks. Out of there, go back to the top, you'll see there were how many comments?
67, at least on this share. This was somebody's share.
Comments. It might be a little bit higher than that. Those are people that actually took a time to leave a remark of congratulations, and there were 379 positive responses. So I was really surprised by that, and I was showing it to my son as it went from 4,000 to 7,000 to 10,000. And so, finally he said, well, that's cool, but, those are really people not people I know.
Right.
And I said, well, yeah, but here's the deal. You want to go into real estate finance. Certainly I can open some doors, but what you can do today is go through this feed and send a connection request to the 379 people who reacted. And then also make sure you get the 67 people that put a comment. And I said, and all you need to do is say, I really appreciate your response or reply on my graduation announcement. I'd love to have you in my network as a future mentor or connection. Would love to connect if you're interested. And I said, right now you're coming hot off them associating you with me. Your acceptance rate on that would probably be about 80%. So you can figure you could get close to 400 people that are in hiring manager positions. And whether or not they're going to hire you, there's one more person in the industry. And so part of what he has to do this week is to go through that and send connection requests, because they probably aren't going to generate a job offer today, but it really will be nice a year from now if something comes up and he has reason to reach out and he can drop my name and ask if they can help with something.
Well, that's kind of it, right? It's the power of really understanding, where you are in life and like what your position was. You used the term, I don't have it in front of me, about your son not realizing kind of what was in front of him. He didn't know what he didn't know.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that's kind of
exactly. At this point in his life, and probably most college graduates, they have a very narrow, myopic view of what they think they're going to be and who they're going to become.
Yep.
And we all know it doesn't work out that way, or rarely. Maybe people that want to be doctors know from an early age. His future could go down a lot of different paths, and that may be the gateway to some of those down the road. If he waits too long and then sends it, they're going to go, who's Travis Hall? I said, take advantage of it now while you can, and it's fresh on their mind.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's a big thing about two of those posts we talked about, the airplane and this graduation announcement, where you diverted from best practices of sharing your personal life. One of the reasons why they were so effective is the timeliness. It's relevant topics right now with people quarantined, hopping on a plane and graduating through social distancing. So I think that's an element to it as well. There's just that awareness of when do you divert from best practices. Right. And it can work if you play it correctly. If you had waited a month to then post your airplane photo and say, hey, by the way, a month ago I did this, it'd be old news, and it wouldn't have garnered as much of a response as it did.
That's a great point, Miles. It's not like I did a picture of my dog chasing the pool sweep in the pool.
Right. Yeah.
It is relevant to the point in time we're in now.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, for sure it is. And I also think that there is a side of it where we spend so much time on LinkedIn putting our professional stuff out there. I think there's a bit of curiosity that happens with people that know you and be like, oh, is that just, he has a son? I didn't know he had a, I think there's some of that plays into it as well. It's just if you overplay it that you people lose interest. Yeah. So love it. So we got some shout outs. We're going to get into some comments and some shout outs to everybody and put some things on screen in a second. But Rodney, you had two quotes that I really wanted to share. First one is, tell me who you go with and I'll tell you who you are. What has you with what inspired you to share that quote with us?
Part of the branding experience is who you're associated with. Okay. In our collateral, for example, it has references, and I'm proud to have some really great people that are willing to say favorable things about us that have experience with us.
Right.
And I can, in our collateral, I can tell you all about the great things we do in our search process and, the usual promotional stuff. But when you share the names of key decision makers, people that are admired in the industry, and you're able to say, well, have so-and-so, call him and ask him. There's an instant credibility. It's it kind of defines who you are. And years ago, we made the decision not to do work with a lot of companies that have a lot of turnover and would be a cash cow revenue producer for us, because we really just didn't want to be associated with them. And that was an expensive decision. It's cost us money, but I can say confidently that the people that we work with and deal with, we feel very, very good about. So I think I heard that from a junior high teacher, and it was one of the few things I can remember from junior high, but it made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so as a consultant or a business operator, when you can show people, well, here's some of the people we do work with, it lends to your brand.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree with that. And I want you to think about something. I'm going to pull this next one up and you can explain it. But I want to get into, before we get into some questions, just what you're seeing the market doing from the hiring perspective. We're hearing all this unemployment's happening and so forth. It would be great to have your take before we hop into wrapping this up.
There's still a shock and awe. And I get asked this every single week about, are we seeing more candidates coming in? There has been some cutbacks, layoffs, furloughs. A lot of them are either people on the very early stage of their career, or they're senior level executives that were a heavy load on the overhead, and frankly could probably afford to suffer through it the most. I think the middle group of managers and line workers are the ones that are being protected a pretty good bit.
Yeah.
But it's again all across the board. We hear the same thing on land acquisition and land disposition with builders and developers. Some are red hot to get deals. They think there's going to be a lot shortage, and some are pulling in the reins.
Right.
So I wish I had a better answer. Right now, we're still in kind of a black hole on which way it's going to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, love it. All right. Well, perfect. You want to give some shout outs real quick? Let's run through what we have. We got some good stuff, I believe. So Anthony Good. Oh, what is that?
Oh, that's all Jerry up there.
Where? Yeah, you know what? Jerry was up there. Let me see if I can find. I think Jerry wrote. He actually commented twice. There's Jerry. There you go. There's a promo. Make framing great again. He has another hat that I need to have on my desk. So it's the crane one. I can't remember what it says, but he also likes you.
This is for Betsy.
Oh, good. Housing Innovation Alliance. You know who else was on here? Was Natalie. Natalie from Housing Innovation Alliance was on as well, for sure. I'll just run through. We had Timothy East. Thanks for joining us. Tom Reddy joined us. Margaret Whelan was joining us. Miles, you're joining us. This is wonderful.
Look, I'm here.
We had Darcy Barlow, George Ryman, Robert Beeks, Alan Staines. We got Greg Ugaldi was joining us, and Greg had a nice comment as well. He said great response. So Greg Ugaldi is a good guy to know, and of course Jerry said you're the best. George Ryman had this to say: "The world has recently changed in an unprecedented manner. How would you suggest potential candidates reevaluate career path in the new economy?"
Let's start by rewinding to making sure they understand before the COVID pandemic, what were they really wanting to do? And that's going to be a different scenario depending on where you are in your career. The younger you are in your career, the bottom line is you need to stay employed. Okay, you don't have a lot of luxuries to maybe be as selective. But there's a big thing on motivators, on the things that really get you jazzed and you enjoy doing whether you were paid or not. So the first thing is realize what got you to where you are today and what you enjoyed. And then how does that fit into the post-COVID world? And here's the catch. Right now, we don't know what post-COVID world looks like. There's a lot of speculation. The top three things that employees are concerned about today is health and well-being, job security, and financial stability. And, if those aren't your concerns, then your career path might look different. I'm also a believer in the proof is in the pudding. The best predictor of future performance is past performance. So when you're assessing your career, you're assessing not only the viability of what you want to do and whether people need you to do it, but also the companies you can do those with. And one thing you can do is look at it from a standpoint of how much of this is really needed that I'm maybe thinking about doing. And if I'm considering a change, how have they reacted in the past year to what's happened? How companies treat their employees today is going to be remembered for years to come.
Yeah, for sure.
We're in one of those points where people are going to remember this.
Good point.
And it's a fair question to ask yourself, why do you feel the need to reassess your career? Is it because you want stability, security? If so, then that's going to be a driver. Ultimately, history shows those are not going to be the things that get you excited about getting up in the morning at whatever point we get past this epidemic.
Great answer. And if that didn't answer you, put another comment in. We'll try and define it. But I think that was a great answer. We're on 3 platforms, by the way. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn Live right now. I'm not sure where this comment came from, but the comment was, the trade show as we know it may not be back for a while. How can you network at a virtual trade show? This is a great HIA response, right? And then how do we shift our approach if we attend more virtual trade shows than in-person events?
Can't answer that. Primarily because I haven't been to one. And I don't know anybody that's had one yet.
Yeah.
So the question's a great question. I'm concerned I would be speculating. I'd say the very first step is to get involved in Zoom conferences and webinars like this. Get accustomed to seeing how the interaction works, the flow of information. You're going to find some organizations are better equipped to hold these virtual meetings, whether it's a trade show or a webinar or whatever, and some aren't. But I've learned a lot in the past month. I didn't even know what Zoom was a month ago or a month and a half ago. And, now I'm on it, every other day. So I think maybe the answer to that is whatever ones you can start virtually attending, do it, and you'll start getting a feel for, here's a good way to kind of get in there. It could be being ready to post a good question. And they go, well, John Smith in Arizona poses this question. What's the panel have to say? And maybe you'll get some of that. Some of it is just being able to understand who all is attending it, like it shows on the right side of the screen. Okay.
Yeah, but this would be kind of a personal note for me. Virtual events and what have you, I'm good in person. I am not the guy writing a book. I'm not the guy writing a long, professional question out somewhere. If you send me an email that's more than 2 paragraphs long, I'm calling you because I just don't want to take the time to sit there and write it. I'm a better, physically and in person. So I mean, that's going to be tough for some people that maybe aren't as wanting to go out and write things and communicate that way, because you don't get the actual physical interaction, the expressions, it's kind of like sending a text message. You can take it the wrong way, even though somebody may not have meant it that way, but the way it's written could be harsh.
Okay. And if that's the case, I would recommend they find out who the organizer is.
Yeah.
And in advance, let them know that they have some expertise in a certain category, and they'd be happy to sit in on a panel if there's any subject matter connected to that. Okay. Let's face it. Trade shows, in my opinion, unless you have planned encounters, it's just walking around hoping you're going to bump into people. Okay. Going to a trade show and not having almost an hour by hour agenda of people you're going to try to meet for coffee, or let's meet by the color display, or something like that, to just catch up for a few minutes. It's just a crapshoot, in my opinion, to go to those. If I go to one, it's to go to the seminars. And,
Yeah.
And usually I'll say, I'll meet you prior to the beginning of it outside in the hallway, and we can sit together and kind of catch up.
Sure.
So,
yeah, that's absolutely true. I know trade shows for me are very busy times, because I am scheduled out and planned out from like the moment I wake up, and I'm really happy. The big one this year is in Orlando, so I won't be 4 hours behind on my sleep doing it. All right. So Anthony Good wrote, "No crane, no gain." That's the hat Jerry has.
There you
Putting
go.
it out there, Jerry. I don't have that one, and remember, my head is small. I have a small head. I'm collecting Integra hats. What's the matter with me? Love it. All right. So one more comment here. Kelly Daniel, Rodney referenced the gig economy and your thoughts on it, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Oh boy, Kelly, you would throw that out here now. I'll be as brief as I can. We're seeing a move more and more to companies interested in hiring people on a short-term contract basis. And there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, there's a lot of wonderful talent that has been impacted because of the COVID situation. And frankly, we've had a lot of clients that were already flattening their organizations with very good people that were being put on the sideline that are not going to automatically move back into a senior VP or a VP of fill in the blank. So right now there is a lot of good talent out there, and we have clients and companies that have expressed the interest in, well, what I really need is an Alex Rodriguez for the last half of the season so that we can make a run at the World Series. There's a purpose and a timing for that. So you're going to see a lot more, in our opinion, of contract for hire that doesn't look like the normal employee. Some of that could be fractional. You end up buying 30% of someone's time for the equivalent of 30% of what they'd normally make annually. And it gives a small company the ability to capture the ability of someone that they never would have been able to hire otherwise. Okay. And then some of it may be, we need all of your time, but we only need it for 4 or 5 months. So you look at what Uber's done. There's so many new gig economies out there that can be more than just a sideline gig. Okay. Uber Works just announced that they're going to do a on-demand, on-hire network. And probably some of it is going to be the drivers that they're not using now. Well, when you think about that, think about if it was the CFO of a former builder or developer that he's in good shape. He doesn't want to play golf and fish. His wife wants him out of the house. She's tired of him being around. Somebody like that would love to invest a portion of their time helping a younger, smaller company grow. And they might do it with 2 or 3 different companies. So we're trying to formalize our thoughts on it, but I think, especially with the pandemic, we're going to see more and more of that, and the baby boomers getting into their 60s and 70s, but still having a lot of game left in them. There's a lot of rich talent that is there for the hire. It just may not be full time.
Yeah. I love it.
That's a great point.
It is a great point. So, Rodney, holy mackerel, man, we're an hour and 6 minutes into this thing. I love it.
Is the band going to start playing now?
That's it, right? We need the Dong Show or all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, I really, we appreciate you taking some time today and coming on to the show today. I mean, we had people in and out for the whole hour, which is great. We got a lot of likes and comments in there. How do people get a hold of you outside of just clicking on LinkedIn here?
Yeah, you can send me a message through rodneyhall.com.
Love it.
My contact data is also on LinkedIn.
I think I have that.
Okay. Email is very simple, rodney@rodneyhall.com. Phone calls, I usually prefer, I'd rather have a text than a phone call.
Yeah.
Because we're a small shop. It's myself and Allison, my partner. And we don't have anybody answering phones or anything like that. So random phone calls are something that it'll probably go to voicemail if I'm not expecting it.
Well, listen, there's a couple things that came in real quick. I just want to put it up here while they have you. So Tom Reddy, great information and comments. Can you see that when I put that up, you two?
I can.
Yeah. This is cool, right? So I don't need to read it to you, is what you're telling me.
That's right. We can read it.
I don't know if it shows up on all the platforms, so I'll read it. It says, great information and comments. Thank you all for the time and efforts you put forth. Pertaining to company branding, is it better to keep consistent message or customized message based on the potential customer's needs? Miles, well, I'll let both of you run with that one.
I'll take the first stab. I think it's a little bit of a keyword mix up in that question, right? There's branding and then there's messaging. So your branding is going to be consistent. That's the identity of your company. That's who you are. That's what you stand for. That's the same and that's consistent no matter what. Then based on what segment or target audience you're talking to, the message that's behind that brand can change based on the need that you're fulfilling to the pain point that audience is feeling.
Yeah. I have two answers for that. When it comes to branding, our brand statement is all search firms have an exhaustive explanation of their methodology and all the steps they go through. And frankly, they're all the same. I mean, I've read every one of them. I've seen them for years. If there was something that really sets us apart, it's that we have a very thorough and deep understanding of the categories that we work within. And not only that, what we consider very deep relationships. So while we may not know everything about everything, in the space that we're in, we know it in spades. So that is the key thing that we talk about on the branding. And on the messaging side, it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, tell me what you know about home building, tell me what you know about land development, tell me what you've done in multifamily. And that's where the message would get tailored to that. I will mention that I picked up one client because I was referred to them and said, so-and-so suggested I get in touch with you. And I specifically referenced, we just finished a land development search in Denver. And, our data and our research is pretty fresh. If they're interested in talking with us about the search, we'd be happy to do it. Well, it turns out it was a development manager, but it was for multifamily, and which is a whole different development manager. Interestingly enough, it didn't stop the guy from reaching out to me. And as we got to talking, he said, well, this isn't going to be on community development. It's going to be on multifamily. So in a way, it went opposite of how I would have thought it would gone. I was actually thinking, geez, I messed that up. Read that wrong. So I'm not really sure if that helps at all. I think there is a value to anything that bears on the customer's needs.
Yeah.
And the solution that it provides being in that message. So,
Absolutely.
Love it. I love it. I mean, this has been a lot of fun, Rodney. I think there's a whole lot of information here, and I'm going to look forward to resharing this and putting this out there in other places, because I think there's tidbits of just knowledge that anybody can use, from an executive level all the way down to somebody coming straight into the industry from school or wherever they're coming from. So I'm going to put up, there's your Rodney at rodneyhall.com is
that's
on there.
me. Yep.
Right? That's you, isn't it?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, listen, Miles, always a pleasure seeing you.
Yeah.
Rodney,
Likewise.
you stole the show today, and I love it. I appreciate everything that you do, and I appreciate running into you. And if it wasn't, like I said, and here's the plug for the Housing Innovation Alliance, they've been really great to me and the things we've been able to do together. And I wouldn't get to meet people like Rodney Hall without them. So I love it. And of course, Jerry, we saw that, right? The crane hat. We need to, Jerry, if you're still watching, no crane, no gain. Rodney says he needs a hat. All right, everyone. Miles, Rodney, you guys just hang tight. We're going to see if this outro actually works this time. Coming into the show, we had some glitches. So let's see if it works, and I'll be right back with you guys in just a minute.